At the time of you watching this, it's Monday, December 9th, which means in 1 week, we've got a scheduled ban announcement that hopefully will shake up the modern format a little bit. Now, for the next 7 days, I know you're going to get bombarded with videos going over potential bans, people's wish lists, and it's probably going to get a little overwhelming. So hopefully I can simplify it a little bit in this video. I'm going to go over two things. First off is the two-ish cards that I think need to go from the modern format right this second. And then we're going to skip over some of the wish list items. I'm going to go straight to 4 cards that I think do the best job of preventing a next man up scenario, which is a lot of people's fear when it comes to modern. We knew when modern had the Nadu banning that Boros Energy was going to immediately fill that slot and become the de facto best deck in the format. Now, we didn't know it was going to be as popular and impactful as it has been over the last few months, but we don't want to get into that rotation of having a tier 0, clearly best deck in the format that runs all the major events and creates a lot of chaos surrounding it. So I'd like to go over a few cards that I think will help to stop that scenario from occurring while hopefully allowing us to continue to play with decks that have come to be a part of the modern metagame and define themselves over the last few months. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into some of the ban ideas. And as soon as that's done, we'll continue on. All right, so the first card on the list, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. I do want to make a very distinct point about the card, but we all know it's the One Ring. It's the card that needs to go from modern the most. It's the most problematic card in the best deck in the format. Now, I know a lot of people are going to have the thought of, oh, if you don't like playing against the Ring, just play a better deck against it. Go play Storm or Belcher or something and beat up on the Ring decks. And I think that's a very respectable take from a competitive player standpoint. If your goal is to win the most games of Magic possible, then yeah, I think dropping your Dimir deck and going for Belcher is a completely fine idea. The problem is, and I want to make this very, very clear, Modern is not catered to that crowd. Modern is catered to the people that want to have fun playing Modern. Whether you agree with it or not, it is. And cards are constantly banned for not being fun to play against. The Ring is a great example of that. It's a card that takes matches of Magic from being in an unlosable position to getting absolutely decimated in the course of 3 turns because your opponent drew 6 cards, found another Ring, had 2 time walks, and there was nothing that you could do about it. It's a card that creates miserable play patterns of tapping, untapping with Manamo, or untapping with Twiddle effects, or bouncing with Teferi, or playing a second Ring and resetting. It's just not an enjoyable Magic experience. So whether you think the card is too powerful or not, you might be right. At the end of the day, it kind of doesn't matter. Enough people don't enjoy playing against it. It's a card that needs to go. So that's about all I'm going to say about that one. We'll skip on to the next card. Get that out of here. I'm not going to talk about like pick rates of the card or it being so popular in the format. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Enough people don't have fun with the card. It needs to go. On to the next card. This is a little dicier of a second pick. So we know if the Ring goes, Boros is still going to be a very, very popular deck, very problematic deck for a lot of fair decks to interact with. And part of the issue here is, for me personally, I don't want Boros out of the format. I think it's very healthy for Modern to have a good, aggressive red deck. And I want it to have some ability to fight through some of the hate that might come up against it, whether it be spot removal or sweepers or counter magic, whatnot. I think that banning something like Guide of Souls or Amped Raptor, Ocelot Pride just kills the deck, and I don't want that to be the case. I still am 100% okay with Boros being a tier 1 deck. I just think it needs to fall more in line with other aggressive creature decks in what is more effective against it. So I've got kind of a split decision here. I've got 2 cards, and I would like to see one of either of them banned. I don't want to see them both banned. I don't want to see them and another thing out of the deck banned. Just one of these 2. The first one is Goblin Bombardment. I think that Goblin Bombardment does a fantastic job of allowing the deck to accrue value through things like spot removal and sweepers. Being able to flage, sack for that extra point of damage can make things like Psychic Frog a lot more awkward against Boros. It's really good at comboing with like Guide of Souls and Ocelot Pride to go wide, swing wide around a board stall and sack stuff off to either make blocks unfortunate or just to push through lethal damage. And I think it does a really good job of negating sweepers. Because if you're able to sack everything to Bombardment in response to that Supreme Verdict or Wrath of the Skies or whatever, and then untap and rebuild, it doesn't stop the pressure from coming at you. So I think Goblin Bombardment is one of my 2 options for Boros. I think without Bombardment, you have a much better job of being able to interact with cards like Ajani Nikado Pariah by not letting them sack off their additional cat token for free to go ahead and flip the Ajani. You have an easier time of dealing with Ocelot Pride tokens that can't just sack off and ping things. Creature combo decks have a little bit better of an ability to gum up the board without losing to something that's just single-handedly like combo. What's the card from Legacy? Punishing Fire style, taking out all their creatures. So Bombardment would be the first one that I would take a look at. The second card is actually one of the cards that pairs extraordinarily well with Goblin Bombardment, and that is Ajani Nikado Pariah. I think Ajani is another one of these cards Boros has access to that is not only a 2-for-1, making 2 bodies, 3 power worth of bodies, but pairs so extraordinarily well with like Goblin Bombardment, Ocelot Pride, to where Boros players are fine using removal spells on their own creatures just to get to flip Ajani. Because once you flip it, you're able to start pinging stuff off. The reason I think it's one or the other, but like not both, is Ajani without Goblin Bombardment is still a really good card. Not quite as powerful since Goblin Bombardment does a phenomenal job of being a 1-for-1 combo with Ajani. Play out your Bombardment, play out your Ajani, sack the token. You have your red permanent to get your damage on the creature creation. You don't have to put a spell into flipping your Ajani. You just get to sack off, ping something right away. They pair extraordinarily well together and give the deck a lot of inevitability in the mid to late game. When cards like Wrath the Skies should be better, but Ajani lives through it, or Sweepers should be better, but Ajani rebuilds. They can't sweep away the Goblin Bombardment. I think that if you take one or the other out of the equation in addition to the One Ring, it creates a much more balanced environment for the deck to be affected in a substantial way by sweeper effects like aggressive creature decks should be, while still maintaining those starts of like Guide of Souls, Ajani, Amped Raptor, Ocelot Pride, just preventing some of the mid to late game value that hangs around through those sweeper effects. So that would be my pick for the bannings, the One Ring, and then either Goblin Bombardment or Ajani. I don't think anything else needs to go from the format at the moment, but that's going to transition really nicely into the 4 cards I want to keep a watch on that I think are very important to prevent a next man up scenario. And if I were in charge of keeping an eye on things. These would be the 4 that I would take the closest look at the moment this ban announcement goes through to see if action needs to be taken sooner rather than later. So number 4, they're not really in order in any meaningful way, and these are for a variety of reasons. And I do want to specify, as always, these are my opinions. If you don't agree with them, that's completely fine. You don't have to, but I think it's good food for thought. So we'll see where we go from here. Number 4 is Orcish Bowmasters. I think that Bowmasters has long been held as like this piece of interaction that's good against the ring, when honestly I don't think that it is. It's okay if you see like multiple Bowmasters and they have to ring and take a few turns, or if they're a combo deck like Twiddlestorm with the ring, but it's just a value card against, say, Boros with the ring. I think most of the time they just ignore Bowmasters. And if the ring gets the axe in a week, then I think for the sake of format diversity, I would like to see Bowmasters go. I think that you want this resurgence of control decks being able to dig for answers, which Bowmaster does an extraordinary job of interacting with those scenarios where your control opponent wants to Flame of Anor, draw 2 at the end of the turn, Archmage's Charm, draw 2, something to that effect. Bowmasters is extremely good in those scenarios. You also have the issue of small creature decks being problematic into Bowmasters. I think I would like to see those decks make a bit of a resurgence if they can, kind of diversify the aggressive creature portfolio in Modern away from just Boros energy. So I don't think Bowmasters necessarily adds anything positive to the format after the leaving of the One Ring. So I think I would like to just see them kind of go in a package deal. But if Bowmaster sticks around, that's kind of the hand we're dealt, and we'll just have to deal with it. But I do think it gives a little bit of a nerf to like the Dimir Frog decks if they're able to get this kind of 2-for-1 threat, pressure relief off of the deck lists. So yeah, even as somebody who plays Bowmasters a reasonable amount of the time, I think if the ring's gone and you want like control decks to be viable without the ring, then their ability to draw cards is an important aspect. And if that's the case, those decks are kind of always going to be suppressed a bit if a flash 2-for-1 that creates a big orc army is in the format. So I think I would just like to see Bowmasters gone, kind of shore up things a little bit. Number 2 is one I would never really have thought about until the last month and a half or so, and that is Disrupting Shoal. I think that the Belcher deck is really good. I think that if the Boros deck continues to be good after the ban announcement, then Belcher will continue to be good. And I think we've seen enough months of data now, which I'll try to link one in the comments section. Make sure you remind me if I forget to. But we've seen a lot of monthly matchup data for Modern where Belcher has shown really good win rates against Boros and Mardu and Dimir and a lot of these decks up at the top of the meta. So I would be a little bit worried that if you take Boros down a notch and Belcher still has good win rates against the rest of the top tier decks, then I'd be afraid of it becoming like the next de facto best deck. I think Disrupting Shoal is one of the integral parts of the deck that allows it to interact profitably on its own turn to protect combo. And because it's a free counter that allows it to interact proactively, I think that's enough of a reason to kind of take a shot at it if you are looking for another ban. We've had Flare of Denial get introduced recently, which pairs really well with Thundertrap Trainer and Philology Archaeologist in the Belcher decks. They still have cards like Spell Snare, Force and Negation to protect combo on your opponent's turn, but I think Disrupting Shoal giving them a free counter option on their own turn, as well as Modern turning into this hyper 2-drop format at the moment. We see the Frog Tide decks running like 3 or 4 copies of Spell Snare because it interacts with so much. Disrupting Shoal gets kind of that same buff in the current meta by allowing you to pitch not only other Disrupting Shoals, but Archaeologists, Thunder Trap Trainers, stuff like that, to be able to counter most of the interactive spells in the format. So I think banning Disrupting Shoal would do enough to knock Belcher down a peg, allow it to be interacted with more by the blue control decks that should be keeping it in check anyway, and kind of coming more in line with decks like Living End that are better able to fight on your opponent's turn. Maybe Belcher just transfers to something like Commandeer, but at the end of the day, like that extra card disadvantage from Commandeer, I think is worth the hit to the deck for the rest of the format, as opposed to Disrupting Shoal, which we've seen since Modern Horizons 2 with all of the Evoke Elementals, that exiling one card from your hand is not really that big of a price to pay, especially if exiling that one card results in you winning the game. So I think Disrupting Shoal kind of deserves to follow its brother in arms in what's it called? The Red Shoal that got banned like way back, this Blazing Shoal that got banned way back at the start of Modern. I think the Shoals being kind of the precursors of some of these free spells in Modern. It's probably just time to say, let's get rid of it. It's like $1 card. Actually, it might be more. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But just let go of some of the free stuff, especially when it's used to proactively protect like unfair combos. Number 3 is really a group of cards, and I'm gonna say the Companions. Like, I don't think the Companions are a bad idea. I like the Companions. I just hate the fact that there's some that are so far and away above the others, and that's the case of cards like Luris, Giganta, Yorion, Zerda in some formats. But they just make it so that if you can afford to play this companion, it's so much of an advantage in a lot of the mid-range and control mirrors. Boros has absolutely been the deck that I've seen most utilize Giganta in Giganta's history in Modern. I've seen like Grixis Shadow decks play Giganta and it was okay, but Boros, especially with the addition of Arena of Glory, has been the card that I think, or the deck that single-handedly has cast the most Gigantas, won with the most Gigantas, and made Giganta into like a legitimate pressure piece in the mid to late game. So I think that I would rather just see all the companions go. I think if you start picking and choosing and saying like, we're going to continue this trend with Luris and Yorion of banning one companion as it becomes noticeable, then it's just going to create like this chain where eventually you're banning, Umori, or eventually you're banning Lutri because something comes along that messes it up. And I don't think you want to keep having this ban announcements for these cards, so just kind of get the whole group of them out of the format, and we'll move on from there. Or, and this is the one I would like to see a lot more, is introduce more generically decent companions. More companions that can go in any deck. More companions that have lower abilities, but something kind of cool. I always thought about a companion that was like a Howling Mine. Like you add it to your hand and then play it out, and it's just every upkeep, that player draws an additional card. Something like that. Something generically cool that has a cost associated, since you got to pay the mana to add it from your command zone or your companion zone, whatever zone it is. and doesn't impact the board in an over-the-top way like Luris or Yorion or something like that did. So that would just be my thought there. The last card on the watch list, and I do have to preface this one by saying I do not think this one needs to be banned for a power level reason. I think this needs to be banned for a Sensei's Divining Top style time consideration reason. And I know people are gonna flame in the comments for this one, saying like, oh my god, how could you suggest that card? But I'll get to my reasoning. And it is Aftermath Analyst. First off, let me start by saying I think that it's cool that the Amulet Titan decks get to add this like combo finish style to their deck. But I think we've only seen this real movement towards Aftermath Analyst at the tail end of the Modern RCQ season, or after the Modern RCQ season ended, and only in like recent weeks has it really started to pick up. It's already a combo that's very slow on Magic Online, having turns from the Amulet Titan player often taking 10 minutes to complete, whether it should be or not, because it's just not a deterministic point for when you will go off. You do have to take into account like your amulets, your spelunkings. You have to take into account what lands are in your graveyard, what lands you have access to. It's not an like automatic, I'm going to get there in this set amount of time combo. And I think that just gets exponentially worse if the card picks up a lot in paper. So like I said, for the same reason as like Sensei's Divining Top, where it becomes end of your turn, I'm going to activate top, untap, upkeep, activate top, draw a card. Oh, I want to shuffle this away, activate top again, go, activate top into your turn, and sit there and like stare at the cards for 5 minutes. I think Aftermath Analyst has that same feel to it of, hey, I'm going to do this thing, and we're going to return lands, we're going to put stacks on the trigger, or triggers on the stack, and players are going to decide if they can interact, how they want to interact, and it's going to be this slow back and forth process. But because the Aftermath Analyst player is technically progressing the board in some way, you can't have like slow play warnings for it. So because we're not on a chess clock system in Modern, and both players share that same 50-minute time, and you don't want one player to have their combo turns be non-deterministic, take an extensive amount of time, and kind of subtract away from that overall 50 minutes, I think that I would take a look at Aftermath Analyst just for tournament time constraint considerations. So yeah, those are my picks. If you're still hanging out, just as a special bonus, I would love to see 2 cards introduced into Modern that have never been printed in a Modern legal format, and that is Pernicious Deed, which I know has been asked about in like every Modern Horizon set that's been printed. Like, are we getting Pernicious Deed? I think the Black-Green X mid-range decks could use a buff, and that would be a nice little card to combat things like Energy. And then the other one is Barrogoyf. If you play a lot of Cube, you've probably cast a Barrogoyf a time or two. If you haven't, it's a 3-mana kind of Tarmogoyf effect, but it's got Death Touch and Lifelink, and when you hit somebody, you get to mill over cards equal to its power, return a creature to your hand. So it's really cool against stuff like Flage, where it can outgrow, kind of fight over those graveyard resources a bit. A little bit of card advantage in like the mid-range control mirrors. So I think Barrogoyf would be a cool card to introduce to the format. We've already got Tarmogoyf and Nethergoyf. Maybe we can finally have a Goyf tribal deck. We got Necrogoyf as well. And something Lurgoyf, the kicker one that I don't think anybody ever played. But yeah, that's about all I got. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and enjoyed a little bit of a different perspective. I will say I don't think any unbans need to happen. I there's a bunch of cards in the unbanned list. I guess this will be my additional bonus to the video. Sure. Wasn't planning on it, but here we go. There's a lot of cards on the modern ban list that I think could be unbanned for a multitude of reasons. One being that they have like no impact on the format whatsoever. And that I think would be cards like Hypergenesis. I think Hypergenesis is just like the fourth worst thing you can cascade into, and the other cascade decks aren't even seeing that much play. So I really don't think it would see any significant usage whatsoever outside of people that really want to, like, what is it, Timmy and some big giant creature for the fun of it. I think there's a lot of cards on the ban list that would be cool. Like Seething Song would probably be fine. I don't think the format really needs it. Whether I think Splinter Twin would make an impact or not, I don't think it's great in current modern, but I don't want to risk those things. I would rather see no unbans than something with a lot of uncertainty. I just don't think that there's anything on the modern ban list that I believe would be fun for the format while also not taking over. I know like Deathrite Shaman's good, Ponder's a card I think that out of the current ban list probably has the most chance of being just like a reasonable impact player in modern. We saw Preordained get unbanned, hasn't really had that much of an impact. Ponder, a little bit better. I don't really want Ponder just for like slow play considerations. Once you get into turns that are like Ponder or Fetch, Ponder, pick a card, draw it, Thought Scour away the other two, Ponder again, or Ponder, shuffle up, draw a card, second Ponder, take one off the top, play a fetch land, shuffle. Like, it's just too many game actions, and I don't think anybody in Modern would have a fun time dealing with that over a long event. So I'd rather just keep everything on the ban list banned, not worry about taking anything off. And yeah, now that's actually all I got. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. As always, if you did, feel free to leave a like. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of the upcoming ban announcement. We got links down below to all the socials, the Twitch, in case you want to check out a live stream, which we've been pretty bad about, but as soon as the ban announcement wraps up, we'll be able to jump back in. Modern's just a little bit of a lame duck format right now. We've got links down below to the deck guides for like Dimir, all the modern Dimir options. And yeah, that's about it. So I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of your morning, evening, afternoon. Go enjoy some good company and good food, and I will catch y'all back live later. Adios for now.